Well, it's actually stirred up a massive face-off between the opponents of the Aam Aadmi Party on the one hand and Kejriwal, Team Kejriwal itself. But let's make no mistake, this is history that's been made. It's never happened before, a minister being sacked. 5 thundering messages that one single act of sacking that minister has actually sent out. Let's have a look at some of those messages. Kejriwal will not dilly-dally over sacking anyone who's accused in his team. There have been inconsistencies before, but now that's what the message being sent out really is. Message number 2 that Arvind Kejriwal is sending out: beware, I will not and I will sting even my own ministers if it's necessary to establish corruption or taint among them. Message number 3 that Arvind Kejriwal is sending out: the Chief Minister will have a zero-tolerance policy when complaints actually land. The question, of course, is, does his audience actually believe that? His adversaries in politics certainly don't. Message number 4 from Arvind Kejriwal: by sacking his minister on live television, the onus will now be on other parties, the BJP, the Congress and others, to match this new Kejri sack standard, a new benchmark that appears to have been created in the anti-corruption crusade. And finally, message number 5, sacking a minister on live television has perhaps destroyed a view that Arvind Kejriwal actually protects the corrupt. Okay, so those are the 5 big messages that we're getting in from that sacking of a minister on live television. Joining us this evening, live from the national capital, after a few hours of this news actually sinking in, we have with us live Sambit Patra of the BJP national spokesperson. Good evening, Sambit. Thanks so much for joining us on the newsroom this evening. Also, Raghav Chadda, national spokesperson for the Aam Aadmi Party, is with us tonight. Sambit, the BJP, you yourself and several other leaders have called it media spectacle, you've called it nautanki, you've called it, drama, hypocrisy. Many different adjectives have been used to describe, what the Aam Aadmi Party has done today. Is it really a media spectacle, Sambit, or is the BJP a little miffed, a little irritated by the example that appears to have been set today, at least in public perception?
In fact, the exact word that I have been using is celebration of corruption. What I have been saying is, left with no option, Mr. Arvind Kejriwal tries to capitalize on an immoral act, that is corruption. And the way the whole Aam Aadmi Party has gone gaga over it is what I call a celebration of corruption. Rather than celebrating corruption, Mr. Arvind Kejriwal and the Aam Aadmi Party should be pondering over the issue that, well, within a span of 6 months, 1/3 of its cabinet has collapsed because of corruption. So what kind of members, in fact, became the cabinet ministers?
Okay.
Cabinet is the place where you have the most talented people that have been selected as MLAs. And Mr. Arvind Kejriwal has maintained right from the very beginning that a rigorous selection process had been taken into being for selecting who would contest the election in Delhi. So I gather most of the people who became MLA in the Aam Aadmi Party were non-corrupt people. And from them, the top 6 were selected as the ministers, but we have seen that 1/3 of them have already collapsed within a span of 6 months.
One small interjection.
Introspection, not celebration.
Do you have a problem in principle with this particular sacking itself? Apart from the surrounding noise, apart from the, the questions that you raise about, inconsistencies in decision making as far as Aam Aadmi Party is concerned, this particular decision that Arvind Kejriwal has taken today, are you for it or against it?
No. We have been maintaining, when left with no other option, when one of their ministers has been caught red-handed. Now what has happened is, this experimentation has been done by Mr. Arvind Kejriwal before in Jitendra Tomar's case. In Jitendra Tomar's case, Mr. Arvind Kejriwal supported Mr. Tomar till Mr. Tomar was driven inside the Tihar jail. When finally he had to give up. Today he realizes that he is left with no other option, because tomorrow, when this whole thing goes to the CBI,
Raghav Chadda, that's the allegation, that you've been cornered into making this decision and you have preempted a disastrous situation for yourself. That first allegation, and I'll come to the second one, Raghav Chadda, you've preempted a situation and made a virtue out of it. That's what the BJP says.
You see, there is a phrase in Hindi, I'll just paraphrase that and use it here, कि बीजेपी का काम है कोसना, वे सदैव कोसते रहेंगे. उनका काम है कोसना, वो कोसेंगे. They will not appreciate this move, and I have also said this on record that the BJP is not just rattled and petrified, but also is in a catch-22 position. They cannot outrightly condemn this move because then it will be politically harmful to them, and they cannot also outrightly accept this move because that will then imply that the BJP will have to act against their corrupt sitting ministers, chief ministers, elected representatives, etc. So therefore, I can completely understand the statements made by the BJP. Let me also say this, that it is not celebration of corruption. This is stern action against corruption, and this is what we promised, and this is why the people of Delhi gave us 67 seats. Now let me point out one more, pertinent.
You're saying that the BJP is sulking. You're saying the BJP is sulking.
It is very.
Can I?
Well, I've said what I said in limited words, but let me say this: it is very easy for the BJP to cry horse over Colgate, 2G, etc., because those scams are done by the Congress. It is very easy for the Congress to talk about scams done by the BJP, like Lalit Gate, like Vyapam, etc. But it is difficult to sack one of your own. We have shown that we walk our talk. We have shown we practice what we preach. And we have shown that we have the conviction and the courage to act against corruption, even if it comes to one of our own men.
Sambit, the Aam Aadmi Party appears to be wagging its finger at the BJP and saying, you guys are, miffed, you guys are sulking because the corruption and taint within your own party, the lack of action by your leadership against your own reportedly or allegedly corrupt ministers or members has only been amplified by this one press conference by Arvind Kejriwal. That's what the Aam Aadmi Party is saying. And they say that's why you're sulking.
Number one. No, that's why I use the word celebration over corruption, because the ones who should be sulking are the ones who are celebrating. Sulking because of the fact that 1/3 of their cabinet has collapsed within 6 months. Now, secondly, there's a difference between the word charge and being caught red-handed. You may have charges, but being caught red-handed, you're left with no option. Charges, well, yes, the ACB is investigating into the ad scam against Mr. Manish Sisodiya, and in fact, the ACB is also looking into the onion scam of Mr. Arvind Kejriwal. Should both these leaders resign because there are charges? They should.
That's a serious charge.
If following this standard, then they should resign.
Raghav Chadha, that's an important point, because that's something that's been raised by several people, including neutral observers. There's a question of inconsistency and selectivity that can also be attached to this, that the Aam Aadmi Party is looking at this as some kind of a redemption step. It's not really, in keeping with some of its past actions with people like its past law minister, allegations, over certain others. You haven't sacked people immediately when those allegations have come up. That's what Sambit Patra is saying. It's inconsistency here.
Let me, you see, as the Chief Minister pointed out in his press address, if there is credible evidence of an act of corruption done by whether our office bearer or any of our elected representatives, he will be sacked and corruption will not be tolerated. Now, speaking of the two scams, the so-called scams that Sambit Patra has just mentioned on this channel, these are figments of imagination of Sambit Patra, and I ask him to refrain from making such comments, otherwise he'll very soon be sued for defamation. That's point number one. Point number two, I partly agree with Sambit Patra when he says, that we were left with no option. It is true. Aam Aadmi Party has no option. We have no option when it comes to corruption.
No, but are you willing to? Are you willing to submit?
Had this option.
Are you willing to submit, Raghav, that there has been inconsistency in the past as well? Because this is not the first time that complaints have come up against ministers or MLAs.
I will answer that, but please let me complete my point that I was making. Yes, Aam Aadmi Party had no option because we are sworn to an anti-corruption India and we will have zero tolerance towards corruption. Mr. Modi, the BJP, etc. have an option. They had the option to overlook the corruption of Vasundhara Raje. They had the option to overlook the Vyapam scam. So they have all these options. We don't have any option, and I have no hesitation in accepting this. When it comes to inconsistencies, as the point and the question raised by you, I am again assuring the people of India, if there is any credible evidence of corruption done by any of our office bearers or elected representatives, etc.,
but you action will be taken,
and action will not only be taken,
but action will also be seen to be prima facie evidence. Raghav, this man has been sacked on prima facie evidence.
There is,
which is leading to the allegations of Nautanki and drama.
Of corruption. Yes. You see, if sacking a minister against whom there are sitting minister, a cabinet minister against whom there are charges of corruption, if you term that as drama, then what will you term promoting and protecting writers, rapists and corruption accused in the union cabinet? This is not drama. This
the
is
hypocrisy
to create
is the
deterrence. And as I've said,
is what the Aam Aadmi Party says.
We are accountable to the millions and millions of people of India who have worked selflessly to build the Aam Aadmi Party.
That's a very serious charge that Raghav Chadha is making. He says that while the Aam Aadmi Party doesn't have a choice, the Kejriwal government doesn't have a choice, the BJP government does have a choice and has chosen not to exercise it. That's a serious charge, Sambit.
No, right now Mr. Raghav Chadha in fact used the term called as figment of imagination when the onion scam and the advertisement scam, which has been looked after by the ACB of Delhi. It's not that the Bharatiya Janata Party is looking after all these scams, the ACB is looking into this. When I mentioned that, Mr. Raghav Chadha said that we will sue you.
Selectivity. So let me
tell Raghav Chadha, Mr. Arvind Kejriwal is well known for the phrase, Sab chor hai. Sab chor hai. He could speak even without an investigation. And when I speak of two scams under Mr. Shishodia and Mr. Arvind Kejriwal, which has been investigated by the ACB, you say, you have the gumption, just a second, you have the gumption of saying that you would sue me? I mean, this is the kind of threatening tactics that the Aam Aadmi Party is trying to use. Secondly, if all your scams are figment of imagination, what credible evidence and credible proof do you have on Lalit Modi case? If you have some, please produce them. Let's see what happens.
It's a question
produce
of
those credible proof.
Even in this particular case,
in this case, the credible proof for the voice recording, the sting operation against your MLA. So I say, no option converted into a situation of virtue, and that's the reason as to why we call it a stunt.
A stunt, a celebration of corruption. Because I started with Sambit, I'm going to end with Raghav. Raghav, final word, 30 seconds, please.
Yes. First of all, as far as these two so-called scams are concerned, the anti-corruption branch, as everybody in Delhi knows, has been physically captured by Mr. Modi's CRPF Jawans, and it is now being headed by a person who himself has been accused by an act of corruption, and his case is lying with appropriate authorities. That's point number one. Point number two, please understand, you see, when it comes to the Bharatiya Janata Party, they very conveniently overlook these these acts of corruption. Now, speaking of Lalit Gate, everybody knows how money was routed from Mauritius, how money was transferred to Vasundhara.
No, everybody knows to produce that. What everybody knows, no.
If you and the party knows and has the credible evidence, they don't have the spine to sack her. Look at Vyapam, the chief minister is accused, half their cabinet is accused, they don't sack them. And let me make another point. When Mr. Modi was the chief minister of Gujarat, almost half his cabinet was charged with serious crimes, from Maya Kodnani to Babu Bhai Bokaria to Dinu Solanki. Did Mr. Modi sack any of them?
Obviously,
it is about creating a precedent. It is about showcasing zero tolerance towards corruption, and this is what the Aam Aadmi Party is all about, and this is what alternative politics is all about.
I'm going to not remove them from the party.
Those are all very relevant questions, both for the BJP and the Aam Aadmi Party. Unfortunately, we're completely out of time on this particular debate, but we're going to continue to track this story over the weekend. Certainly, it's one of the biggest stories we've covered here on India Today. The question now is, has this set a new benchmark as far as probity is concerned? Will we see more such sackings, either live on television or when complaints are actually made? That is the question here. It's not really so much about politics, because the anti-corruption narrative is simply too important to be mired in the tutu meme politics that are engaged in by the BJP, the Congress and the Aam Aadmi Party. Is there a level of irritation? We'll have to see how this actually goes. Questions on all sides, including for Delhi Chief Minister Arvind Kejriwal. It's not as clean as he thinks it is. There are allegations of inconsistency as well that haven't been satisfactorily answered. Raghav Chadha and Sambit Patra, pleasure having you gentlemen. Thank you so much for joining us on this debate here on the Newsroom.